getting into internet marketing was what made me realize that I could actually start a business with low overhead, and followed my actual passion, which has always been fashion. And now I've got my bikini bands, hair accessories, made a pivot during COVID to do this embroidery, screen printing, and everything like that. That became just more of a need. And so now I'm just working on all these different businesses now. And I'm still learning from you guys.
Welcome to the Paid to Create podcast, where we dig into the secret strategies of successful creators making a lucrative living. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
I just have to tell you about Kartra, the marketing platform that has seriously transformed my business. You know how running a business can be insanely time consuming, right? Well, Kartra has been a game changer for me. It's honestly like having an entire marketing team in my pocket. And what I love most is that it automates all the tedious daily tasks for me, from marketing to sales to even customer experience. I can't believe how much time and energy I've saved since I started using it. And get this, with Kartra, I can create websites, funnels, courses, membership sites, email campaigns, calendars, surveys, you name it. It's made managing my business so much simpler and more affordable. Honestly, I can't recommend Kartra enough. If you're curious, head to paidtocreatepodcast.com/Kartra to start your trial. Trust me, you won't regret it. Welcome everybody to the Paid to Create podcast. I'm AJ Roberts alongside my co-host and the boss lady, Sarah Jenkins. And our guest today is Joanna Kinsman. She's the founder of Kinsman, Kini Bands, Kini Supply Company, and Scale into Retail. Joanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here. When I first met you, it was, I think, at an internet marketing event, and I think you were an assistant for someone, or you were helping somebody out, working the crowd. And then you went into fashion. So, how in the world do you go from, the world of marketing to starting your own fashion business?
Well, I actually got into marketing completely randomly. I found a job on Craigslist, you guys, when I moved out to San Diego from Boston. And getting into internet marketing was what made me realize that I could actually start a business with low overhead. And, you guys really were the ones that taught me that I could do this. And so I was just working for all these different, online entrepreneurs, starting with Dr. Mike, Kevin Nations, Maria Andros, and I worked obviously for you guys for a while too. So it's so cool. And everyone that I worked for, I'd pick up these, different skill sets and, until I figured it out on my own and followed my actual passion, which has always been fashion. And now I've got my bikini bands, hair accessories, and made a pivot. Made a pivot during COVID to do this embroidery, screen printing, and everything like that. That became just more of a need. And so now I'm just working on all these different businesses now. And I'm still learning from you guys.
So with the pivot, obviously that came during COVID, and your business, like you pivoted Kini Bands to masks.
Yep.
Right.
That was awesome.
And that was a huge shift for you. But then you started helping other brands. How did that come about? Because, when you're building your own brand, oftentimes like you're not really thinking like, how can I help another brand? Right. But now so many brands are coming to you, so many companies, and, you're doing merch for them and building out, additional revenue streams for them. So like, was that just an accidental thing, or like, how did that, come?
So yeah, the pivot with the masks was interesting. Actually, I still remember I was out at Sarah's, just hanging out during COVID at the start of it. Yes, working. and I remember being asked by the fitness franchises that I work with, and I'm getting all these emails. Hey, can you guys make face masks? We really need them. And so kind of went down that path for a while, which was great. We had all kinds of extra fabric, the strings from Kini Bands and everything. So it was all right there and just set up perfectly, for us to hop in and do that. We made cute masks with sequins and tigers. And
yeah, they're very fashionable.
Yeah.
Well, I'll drag you back. So
Yes.
you decided to do your Kini Bands, your hair things that, obviously we know and love based on the bikini material that doesn't let your hair get all messed up and you go in the ocean. That's the beach thing, which is really cool. But then your mask was the same thing. It was one of the most comfortable masks I'd ever worn. It was made of bikini material, so stretchy but breathable and still safe, like the multiple layers. Oh my word, they were the cutest masks ever. I sold them for you. Wherever it was like, where did you get your mask? I'm like, I have 3 in my purse. Would you like them? Because I believed in them and I loved them. So, I mean, I know you had massive success with that, but I helped a little.
You absolutely did. Thank you. Sarah's always been such a great supporter of me.
So when you started the brand, obviously you said you built the confidence. You're working with different, online marketers, and you saw how to position products, how to get in front of an audience. So you saw the components to go into building a successful business. But the fashion industry is a very difficult business to crack into. And I remember all of a sudden, like you were doing runway shows and you had like your designs and like all of this stuff. Like maybe go back to like that journey, because I think for a lot of people like you had a dream, and then like you kind of did something else, but then it was like, oh, maybe I can do this. But it's still a huge leap of faith. It still takes a lot of guts and probably a lot of hard work to get going. And so maybe like you can talk about like the beginning of that, the struggles you faced, how you overcame those.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I was just telling someone about this yesterday, how I was, I'd work my like full-time job for whomever I was working for. So, whether that was a 9 to 5 or eventually cut down my hours and then go home, open up my computer, and then turn to my business. So I was getting like headaches from staring at a screen all day working for someone else, then working for myself. But I was eventually able to make that switch. And it's so nice. I feel like so many people in the marketing industry are so flexible too, and supportive, that you guys we want to see each other succeed and create. So, Sarah, for instance, you guys always knew that I had this passion project. And, so I was able to wean down my hours and kind of switch over into that. So, but it was certainly a struggle too, because I've always self-funded everything. And
that's what we admire, though.
Yeah.
We saw the entrepreneurship inside you, and we're like, we see that you can do it. You can do the work, you can hustle. So of course we want to be there for you. We've done it. We've hustled. We've had to push days and days, hours on end, going to bed at midnight. So we saw you do it. Of course we're going to be supportive. We understand.
yes. Thank you. It makes all the difference. And that's where I sort of try to instill in the people now that work for me is like, let me support your dream and what you're doing, because, I understand that maybe that you don't always want to work for me, and how can I help?
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I admire about you is you go with the flow, right? And the reason I bring that up is because when you first started, it was bikinis, and then you had, out of the extra material, you made the bikini bands, and people started asking about that. You saw the way the demand was, and you pivoted. With COVID, you pivoted, and and now, if I'm not incorrect, the majority of the business is the creation for other brands. Mm-hmm. So, on that journey, like how have you like been able to flow with that without getting attached to the product? Because I think a lot of businesses, like they have all the elements, but sometimes the product that they think is the product that they're going to have the home run with isn't, right? But they hold on to that for so long. And if you had held on to the making bikinis, like everything else that has come, all the products you've had, all the different fashion items, like never would have came. So, what led you to just like being open to those changes or moving with the flow, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Actually, I'm really like diving back in, because this is back in like 2014.
OG, baby.
Yeah, when I made that switch. And it took me, what they say, like success leaves clues, right? And so, I had so many people just sort of like, asking, and it took quite a few times to be like, oh, can I give you money for this product? Oh, you should really do this. And it just took me a while to realize that I had an amazing product that I was just sort of sitting on with Kini bands. And that became just fun and easy. I really enjoyed focusing on getting my product into retail locations. So that, once I think I like saw that first sale come in, then you could get hooked. You're like, okay, well, there's one, there's more. And that became my obsession, was getting into retail locations. So spas, resorts, fitness studios, salons, list building. And then, and now I also help customers and clients to do that same thing with their products.
So you did that. We went to the La Costa Resort and Spa.
Yes.
And we went to the Deepak Chopra Center, and your Kini bands were there. And I was like, no way. That is so cool. It's cool. Like, I know her. But I wondered how you got into that specifically. How do you get it into the retail store?
So that, and again, kind of going back to just picking up different skills, working for all these different successful marketers, I finally learned about list building and having a system, following up, using a CRM. So I just started.
Like Kartra.
Yes.
Shameless plug.
Love Kartra. So I was figuring it out. And then what I realized set me apart, though, getting into those retail spots was I would send out my email blasts. So then I've got all these, cold leads, and I would call the warm and the hot leads. Basically, anyone who asked for more information, then I was calling. So dialing for dollars. And that became the name of the game, was just, tallies every day of like what stores I could get into.
It's really interesting because, I don't know anything about retail, right? I skipped that. Ran a health club for a little bit. That was close to retail as I would have ever gotten. Everything since then has been online. So for over 20 years now, just online. And that's kind of the world you came from. But it's interesting because really what it came down to was like you were knocking doors, right? And I think that's what I've seen with a lot of creators. It doesn't matter what they've created. The ones that are successful are the ones that keep putting their product in front of people, whether that's online or whether that's like you, or you were reaching out to people. And then through people who are curious or whatever, it was like, okay, follow up with them. But then you added the personal touch by calling them. And so it was a lot of work, but like you get into one and you're like, okay, this works. And you just kept going. There is so many people you hear on Shark Tank and things like that, where they're like, oh, we want to break into retail. And they'll say like, well, what have you done? And they're like, oh, we're just looking for the right connection. But those that seem to be successful are always the ones who just continue every day to like do the mundane things that add up over time. And so it's super interesting with that. Was there any challenges getting into retail? Like any issues with like, cause they don't pay you up front, right? You send a product, there's usually a 30-day or 60-day until they have to send you money or send product back, right? So was there any challenges with that?
Yes, I've definitely had a lot of them. So with one interesting thing is with accessories, you actually can, it's common to collect the money up front because we can ship, same day, next day, maybe, in a week or something like that. So that with the bigger accounts though, getting into these like bigger, with Billabong, with the, hotels, they've got terms. And so most of the time, fortunately they paid, and a lot of times, would be late. Unfortunately, small invoices slip through the cracks of like little hair ties. And, but so that's another part of it too, is kind of like chasing those down. So many, I feel like every single like day I'd be like, oh my gosh, there's some new issue coming up. One time my charms weren't coming in from overseas. I had no product. I had a big order that was going to cancel, and actually Sarah was friends with them, and she contacted them. She goes, "Can you please, please like take my friends, keep her order. Don't bail on her. Trust me, she's reliable. She's good for it." And they kept the order, and then they ended up reordering after that. So
once you sell your product once, they say that customers really like it.
Yeah.
Like I, for one, I've used tons of products that people give me or say, hey, try this, and I'll buy things from wherever. I just continue to buy your bikini bands because they work so well in my hair, and I have 3 daughters, so they work really well in our hair. We just keep buying them. Like, these are great. I'm going to keep buying them. So when you have a customer, if you have a great product, it continues.
And I know that Sarah loves them because even when I sneak up on her out of the blue and I'm like show up at lunch and she doesn't even know I'm going to be there, then I see she's still wearing my
They're the only hair
bands.
things I have, to be honest. Like, they're the only ones I have. So because I like them so much, I don't want to go to other places.
Yeah, the key point there is you have a great product and people use it, and when they use something, and they need more of them, they need more of them, and it's one of those things that I think that's the other piece of success that most people, like you can learn the marketing and sales, but if the product isn't good, all you're ever going to be doing is marketing and sales. When you have a great product, the marketing and sales can launch that, but after a while, the product kind of has its own life, and then you get to focus on those other things. But what's interesting is I think like as you tell the story of Sarah and you talk about like how you approach stuff, like there really is that personal touch. And so even though you're a remote business in a sense, like you are not in the same city as most of your clients, right? The reality is you have that personal touch, and like you say, issues came up, but you're able to address those and work with those. How do you, like with those larger accounts, right? Obviously, like you said, a small slips through the cracks, and oftentimes, especially as a female business owner, I imagine like like you couldn't be brushed aside. Like, oh, they're not going to, it doesn't matter. Like it's only a couple of $1,000 of order, but like to you, that could be the difference between keeping the doors open for another 30 days. So how do you deal with those interactions so that like your business can survive, knowing that like, like you mentioned like Billabong, like that's, $100 millions of dollars company. Like, why would they worry about you, and you've got to kind of, it's important for you, right?
Yeah.
Not for them, but for you. So how do you manage those relationships with them to make sure that, you're continuing on and that they are treating you fairly?
Mm-hmm. I have to say I have been really fortunate with, being treated with a lot of grace when it comes to these large businesses. So I can't really say that I have too many, like really any complaints that, I felt just, grateful to get into there. They did always pay. I've got, kind of like my email system too, where, I can send out my mass emails to remind people to pay their invoices and all that. So I know that can really like make or break a company. I'm getting into, some of these like, I don't want to say like Nordstrom or, you've got to be able to fund all of that. And those can oftentimes be like 90-day terms. So yeah, that can be pretty detrimental. I, for one, haven't had to deal with that just yet. But factoring is something where like I had this one big, large, it was like $200,000 order. And I have to fund all, the creation of all that up front. But yeah, using factoring was a huge, game changer for me.
What is that?
So they look at your purchase order, and then they're able to provide enough money to, to actually create it. And then they get paid once the invoice gets paid. And so those funds go to them, and then they distribute the funds back to you.
That seems complicated.
It is, but it's my only way.
That's what you do.
Yeah. Yes. It's always, everything's figure outable, I guess.
Yeah. I guess as you go along, you learn these kind of things, and, you have to keep striving forward. I think one of the beauties, knowing you, I have an advantage, right? But one of the beautiful things about it is there's a lot you don't know. So you kind of go in blind. If you knew everything you know now, I would imagine you might not have gone forward with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So on that sense, like how do you navigate your emotions and like the ups and downs and things like that? Like you mentioned, like your charms didn't come in, and obviously you could have supply issues, you could have where machines break down and things like that. So just in general, like how do you manage all of that stress and the team and all of those fun things that come with owning a business?
Oh man, I used to melt down. It was like the end of the world, like a teenager going through their first breakup or something. But then you just like moving forward, you start to realize, okay, like what you need will show up, and just trusting the whole process and the universe. And I really do believe that. So now instead of like getting down, I'm like, I do consider myself to be pretty resilient, because I feel like I have kind of like seen it all and hit a lot of like highs and lows. So just understanding that it does work out. So
it works out.
It does.
So one of the things,
magic.
Every influencer or everyone who's building a brand always thinks about adding merch, right? And whether it's free T-shirts or whether it's that. Is that a good idea? Should people be adding merch, or like,
Yes. And that's what I love too. So, because we do our own in-house embroidery, is, saying like, I'm like, make one hat. Let's just make one and see if it sells. So being able to support these small businesses, who sometimes think that they need to invest a lot of money into merch. I'm like, I don't want you to get something if it's not going to move. So, I'm happy to just, focus on the small orders and help these new, smaller brands and everything. So, it's so fun to get creative with that. So I've really been enjoying that part of it.
Have you worked with any companies that are kind of surprised, like when they've added merch in, like how well it moves? Because like I've been to the barber shop, and there's like, a hat and a T-shirt at the barbers, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to buy that. But then I look over, and the guy next to me is like wearing it, and I'm like, well, someone is in and out house T-shirts. People buy that, like you see it all the time. It's like walking advertisements. So it's like I can't really think of a business that couldn't have that, but like a lot of businesses like don't, like a hairdresser wouldn't be like, oh yeah, people would wear my brand, but they do.
Dude, we should totally wear Carter hats for these podcasts.
Oh yeah. Sitting over there.
We're blowing it right now.
It's really good today, so no, maybe next time.
Yeah, poor branding on our part, right?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, is there any brands that have been surprised? Like, they've said, okay, we'll try it. And then they've like, it's really moved and they've come back and put bigger orders in and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I do see that a lot. And so they're just trying to support that. And, I kind of feel like I'm not pushy in my sales, but I'm always like, I'm like, you guys need hats, you need merch. And yeah, that, putting it up online for them, it's interesting because people are, can be pretty conservative in their orders. So yeah, it's fun to, to get the quick reorders and, that you're helping them to, to generate more revenue too. So yeah, it's fun.
I know one of your favorites was that studio that has a franchise. So now you've got a franchise order. So now you have to fulfill it for all of the US. That must be super hard.
Yeah, but it's great. I mean, just that one logo over and over and over again. That's
I liked it.
Yeah.
That's really cool. How do you like with that, like kind of like retail you're mentioning, how do you approach these brands? Is it the same thing? Just door to door, like going in and being like, hey, you guys should have merch, like, is that kind of the same approach there? Just
I do mostly the same way that I grew Kini bands. So going with kind of a cold list oftentimes, and then following up with the warm and hot leads. And then I especially around here, I do have a lot of word of mouth customers to local businesses. So very fortunate to, connect, say, with one friend who owns a couple of restaurants. Then, next thing I know, then, their friends are asking. So that's been cool to just kind of watch it grow, this ripple effect.
That's very cool. Yeah. What's been the hardest part of the business?
The hardest part for me is still figuring out how to scale and I would say like managing people too. I'm not a people manager. But I do pride myself in having my workspace be a place where people do want to come in. So, and be there and feel comfortable. But when it comes to, a lot of the operations stuff, I'm not the best at it. So, right now I'm trying to find the right person to put into place there.
And we know all about how important ops is, right?
I mean, I did okay, but then, I got professional and hired people. So that knew things like laws and how to do things better.
Systems and processes.
Always learning.
Yeah. Systems and processes, yeah.
Yes.
It's crazy that some people enjoy that stuff. But I think for a creator, that's one of the most important people you can have on your team.
Yes.
Because if you're like me, you have a ton of ideas, right? And it's like, you can't execute all your ideas. I know you have a ton of ideas. There's a million things you want to do. Like, and you see stuff all the time. And when you see stuff, it's like, ooh, like how can we put things in? So that's something that's just like, is super important, I think, for most creators. And so I think that, I know you've gone through a few different people when moving forward. But like, with that, like, how do you like process these ideas? Like, obviously you probably see trends and you see things and it's like, oh, we could be doing this or we could be getting into that.
She jumped in the mask one really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was resistant to the mask thing. I was like, no, this will be over soon. And, it took me a while.
It wasn't.
Yeah. But I'm trying to think.
Other creatives, other ways of moving things forward or changing directions.
Did you have a system or a process you go through? Like, because like obviously you went from bikinis to Kini bands to, you had tops and jackets and, and that's what you're, working with other people. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you decide what goes, like what you're going to add and what you're not going to add?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice because I can sort of like test things out, with small minimum, like this hat, for instance, I'm like, okay, let me just like get one and try it out, see what the response is. So where, you get people, I would say, oh, where can I get one of those? I'm like, ding. All right. So I feel like I've always been pretty good at like spotting trends and knowing what will sell. And that's why I have done well with the, say, embroidery and getting into working with especially fitness studios. So just because, so this is sort of like my new shiny, I don't want to say it's a shiny object. My new passion project is focusing on the retail area of fitness studios. So where they can, normally you walk in, you see t-shirts and water bottles. So making it more of a boutique experience. And so helping these studios to generate more revenue that way. But again, just not making them commit to a ton of merch. Just say, hey, just try 3 and see how it goes.
Well, I love that because like that's whenever someone says, like how can we improve this website? It's like, well, you should test.
Yeah.
The answer is always test.
Let's do this differently.
Should I do this or should I? Yes.
Yeah.
Test. So
all digital mock-ups. And Canva is like absolute best friend other than Sarah.
Yeah.
Right. You have to say that.
And I think that hesitant, you said, you know, you're hesitant with the masks, but it's that mind going, okay, like, is this going to last? Is it worth the investment? Like that cautiousness is a great skill set to have, because there is something to being first to market, but there's a lot of firsts that don't end up being the best.
The one.
You know, Apple wasn't the first smartphone, but it arguably became the most dominant, right? And so being first doesn't
cool
always
kids.
mean that there's an advantage to that. Sometimes it's better to sit back, you know, make sure there's an adoption and make sure it actually is going to happen, and then, you know, do it better than everybody else, which I've seen you do. So
Well, I think what's nice with what I am doing is that we can always create one item, or you know, order one. So I've got my sourcing, I've got my my sewing contract team. So I mean, when I started Kini Bands, I brought, you know, fabric to my seamstress. I was like, I want to try this. Can you just, you know, can you make like 5 of these? Let's just test. So, you know, it started there. So being able to be very agile. And then, went from there. These were all, it used to be like handmade one at a time.
Well, there's no, oh, I know. I remember we were cutting fabrics.
Yep. Yes.
I asked her to come over and hang out with me one time. I had the girls by myself. I'm like, hey, let's just hang out. I've got the 2 little girls with me and we're just doing nothing. Let's watch a movie. She goes, I have to work. I was like, great. Bring it. My girls know how to use scissors and we can tie knots and threads. And it was pretty awesome. We did so many that day. I'm glad it helped you. There's no shortage with girls with hair that need ponytails. Never.
Yep.
I went to a restaurant
Or
where they
men.
gave us these aprons for the hot pot and they gave us hair things for the girls. And I was like, what? They're like, well, you're going to need it. I'm like, okay.
it's a great point.
Humble beginnings.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about, so you mentioned there about how you were originally cutting them yourself, but then you had a seamstress, right? I think one of the hardest things for creators is that we often have a skill set, right? So we're creative, but then out of necessity in the beginning, we'll learn the skill, right? Whether that's sewing or, you know, for my it was a copywriting, you know, I learned
Accounting.
copywriting, but at some point you have to say like, okay, if I'm going to run a business, like I can't be the one cutting and making all. You might do the first one, but beyond that, you know, you have to have a team. So how did you transition that, like for you? Because it's especially when you're a small business, you know, a lot of companies we've worked with, you know, back when I was in fitness, same thing, like gym owners would do the training and it was like, well, I can't afford to hire someone else, but I can't grow my business if I don't. So how was that transition for you? And, you know, how did you navigate that mentally? And, you know, because it's the first big shift where you have to say, okay, I need to let something go in order to grow.
Yeah. So what's interesting is I still remember a friend saying to me that traveling, you know, actually like will help your business and getting away from it.
Oh, we know you like to travel.
I love to have fun. So I was going to Greece and I had to figure out
Greece. Yeah.
I was going with friends, but it was during the summer, and now it's my busiest time for Kini Bands. Yeah. So I had to figure out how that was going to work. So just the fact that I had a short amount of time, a couple of weeks to say, okay, let's put this person in place. Let's switch from the seamstress, find it. So, you know, a contract team, and this is how, you know, how it's all going to work out. And it, you know, it wasn't perfect, but it did. And so I've been working with that team ever since. But yeah, I still remember being on Sarah's floor, tagging products in her living room, being with my seamstress where I was cutting the strings and like feeding the charms in. She's sewing them, handing them back to me. I'm cutting them, tagging them, bagging. I slept on her couch before, go up to LA, get more fabric and all that. So fortunately, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to share because I think that's, you know, I don't know where this has come from or why it's happened, but like a lot of people don't see the work that goes in to get to where you are, right? And so they start their business journey and they compare themselves to like someone like you know, like, well, she's traveling all the time and she's doing this and she's doing that. And they
Must
don't
be easy.
They don't
Yeah.
and they don't want to spend the time on someone's couch or move back home to save money. Like there's this, you know, they want the result without the work, right? That's kind of an unfortunate truth of a lot of society today. And so I think it's important you share that stuff because I think that, you know, if you are a creator, especially if you're young, right? And you have these, I want to do something big, you have to understand that there's going to be a phase, usually a decade. Some people manage not to need that long, but, you know, usually a decade of just hard work and like sacrifice and grind. And I think it's so important to like share those stories, share about how the kids were cutting, all that stuff, because most people don't know about that stuff because it's not what people share on social media. It's not what you show, because where you are now is very different than where you were back then. And we didn't have social media when we were doing all of this, like we've got like one picture of us working around a kitchen table,
One.
and,
Oh my gosh, so true.
15
yeah,
years.
and then when you were working, we had the house that was the office. So we had a house as the office.
We're
and
more photogenic
we
now.
have like 20 people there. But like
We're only getting better.
there was no social media, so it's like we showed up to work, we worked.
Yeah, why would you take
Yeah.
a picture?
But like people don't see that stuff, and I think that's so important. How do you, like, now that you are a business owner, how do you apply those marketing and like sales lessons that you learned in the beginning? Like, how is that carried over from, the online world to an actual, e-com store and retail stores and now mentoring other people too?
I still, it's funny because I feel like you guys like brought me up and like raised me in marketing, but I'm still like, I was like, I know what kind of like what to do. But I'm not the greatest at marketing my own products.
I disagree. You've got that personal touch that everybody adores, and you've got a great product. So you're like, hey, look at my great product. And you truly believe in it. So you believe in the value of what you're giving them. And it's your job to show them, I have this thing of value. You're going to need this. You're going to want this. And that allows you to be free flowing with, hey, look what I have for you. Because you have a great product.
Yeah, I think I'd still like that in-person like touch and, being able to go out and make those connections. So
That comes through in your emails too. Like I've gotten your emails and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to reorder.
thank you.
That confidence comes through, and it's such it like, again, very few people are willing to pick up the phone nowadays. And we've even worked with companies that we've brought in to do like save a sale and stuff like that, and they just want to do text message. They very few people want to just pick up the phone. Because very few people will pick up the phone and speak back to them, right? So it's like, but when you do get someone on the phone, the conversation is that much more fruitful, So that's super interesting.
Yeah, getting good at phone just sales and conversations and just being comfortable with it was such a great skill that I learned in one of the last jobs that I had in golf marketing. I was calling. We had a list of 800 golf courses, and I'm on the phone. At first, I'm like, "This is so awkward." Like I feel awkward now, but you get used to it and just practice, and that's really been like such a big difference maker for me.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, were you always confident? Because I think that some people think, well, you're born that way. You're extrovert, you're confident, you like to speak to people. But you just said, like, when you first started, you were kind of like nervous. And
my boss was right there too. I'm like, I don't want to mess up. But now, then it just became so easy. And then these the directors of golf were calling, and maybe he'd answer, and then they're like, oh, is Joanna around? So he's like, oh, you don't want to talk to me anymore.
Yeah. So what with that, when you were talking, what was like the shift mentally from like, oh, I don't want to have to call all these people to, like, because there's that level of fear of rejection, right? Like, they don't want to hear from me. I'm just bugging them. That's what a lot of people think. Like, if they're calling someone, like, they're just being a nuisance, right? And you want to be a welcome guest. But what was that switch for you? Was it just sheer, like, you knew with the numbers, as long as you hit enough people, that you would get the right people in the end? Or was there something else that changed in terms of just giving you that confidence to continue to reach out to more and more people?
Yeah, I think it's, to Sarah's point, that you're offering a product that they will gain value from. So, so that you know that already going into it. But then once you're seeing the reorders too, you're like, okay, this works. And, seeing, okay, I'm helping them. They're making more money because of us, and that feels really good. So, and also knowing we had, is it risk mitigators? That Andy, that Andy mentored me for a long time. And so it was like for my hair accessories, coming up with a guarantee. So, hey, if you don't sell through these by X date, I'll take them back. I'll exchange them, buy back anything. And nobody ever even took me up on it, but they felt confident. I felt confident knowing that I could sell them to anybody else. So, that's fun. And I've actually made some really cool, like, just personal relationships with these buyers and, owners of all these retail locations, even like all over the world, actually. We've gotten into a few places overseas. So
But that speaks again to the value of your product. If you say, I'll buy back what doesn't sell, you know it will sell.
Yep.
Just give 1 or 2 customers a chance to use it. They'll come back and buy more.
Exactly.
It's that money back guarantee, you know, and it's funny because they say like, you know, you can give money back guarantees like for a year. You can just say, you know, like if you don't use it, it doesn't work. Like you got 12 months to figure it out. And like you said, nobody's ever called you on it because
Don't think diet pills should have that guarantee.
definitely. Well, no. But the interesting thing is that some of the most successful have a double your money back guarantee.
Oh, I want those.
Because what they've learned is that most people fail because they don't actually take the pills.
Oh, I'd love to take a pill and have it work. That's all the running that gets me.
If you take the pills and do what we tell you to do and you don't get results, well, that means they actually have to take the pills, follow the diet, and do the workouts.
But I also have to run. All right, you got me there.
But if they don't do that, you know, they're not going to claim the double your money back. But it's that in the beginning, removing the risk, you know, removing the risk in their mind. Like they've never heard of Kini bands before, probably, you know, like no offense, but like we can be famous in our world, but then you walk outside and nobody has a clue who you are, right? So you're calling up big companies, like they don't know Joanna, they don't know Kini bands. But when you put something like that, it's a risk reversal, like no brainer. It's like, well, what do we have to lose? Like, what do we have to lose? And that's a conversation you want in any conversation, no matter what you're selling, is you want the person on there, well, I got nothing to lose here. I only have something to gain. So it's super interesting you bring that in because like it kind of adds to why you were able to get into retail, right? Because you made it so that there was no risk on their part.
There's no reason to say no.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah. And that's what you always, you know, a great offer always has that, you know, so it's super, super cool. With the relationships that you have built, like you say, like it's kind of led to other things. Is there any relationships that like in the beginning, just, you know, could have been anyone that have led to something that you could never have imagined?
So in my embroidery business, it's interesting looking back at, okay, I have like my biggest customer right now, or one of, is a new company called Long Ball, and it's a brand of alcohol. I should probably some today.
That's awesome.
It's so good. It's an incredible new product. It's like a golf based, but they've been sending me business. But the reason that I got linked up with them was because one of my best friends, you know, dated someone who was part of that company, and you know, it's like, and then they met. He met because he was like roommates with a friend of mine. And so just all these like weird little tie-ins. Like, oh, like if this person hadn't gotten a room on Craigslist with this, you know, like then I wouldn't have met this person and that person. So just funny to see how, you know, the one little thing makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
So
It's a small world.
it really is.
I always told Andy, I was like, you know, if it wasn't for, you know, my first husband or whatever, I might not have met you. And he's like, shh, we always would have found each other. I was like, aw, probably not though.
I'm sure you would have figured it out.
What are some of the biggest shifts in your business? Like not obviously moving to different products and things like that, but like as a business, how you operate, like how you think, like what are some of the biggest shifts that have happened over the years for you?
I think one of them, you know, kind of going back to not having your emotions tied into, you know, the ups and downs. I would say definitely like celebrating the wins, but not getting so like bent out of shape over the losses, knowing that it'll come back around. So just trusting in the process.
Yeah, that's great. What does the future look like for you in your mind?
Ooh, good question.
I'm very excited about, you know, systems and processes that it just kind of keeps coming up for me. So I'm okay, finally, because I am a creator.
I'm very excited about systems.
I am getting that into place because
terrible.
when it's done,
Right.
and yeah, getting because you know the goal is to have Kini Bands fully running on its own, to have Kini Supply Co. with the embroidery and screen print running on its own, because I really want to be able to help other other product owners to get their product out into retail locations, or help them create their product. So just being able to help more people. And, you know, if I'm working behind a computer trying to do everything like we talked about, then I can't do that. So
You want to work on your business, not in your business.
Exactly. Yes.
It's a growing theme for us with our people that we've talked to, are paid to create. Everyone's paid to create something, whether you're a doctor and you're paid to create health and prescriptions, or you're paid to create some marketing or some products like Kini Band or something. But everyone's paid to create something. And usually we all walk into it with the idea that we're going to help somebody. Doctors want to help the sick, and personal trainers want to help get you fit and feel better and look better, but then it turns into a business. So you come from the same spot. You wanted to help people with something, and now it's just growing.
Yeah, I do kind of have to take a step back sometimes. I'm like, man, when I think about just my revenue and my life is it like supported by people who are willing to part with their money for something that I've created, and that's a really cool thought, and kind of humbling.
Yep. Very
so that's why I love the paid to create, just the name of it too, and it really resonates.
Right. With scale into retail, which is your real passion, helping others, right? You said. When brands come to you, what are some of their challenges that you see that, is a reason that they haven't been able to break into retail yet?
Number one, definitely not knowing how to generate their lists. So it's sort of this, people and then they'll once they have a list, it's kind of this man-made or one at a time on a Google, like a Google Drive on a spreadsheet, color coded and everything. So again, figuring out who their list is to contact, and then for them to figure out how to actually how to be reaching out using a CRM, following up. I had actually a brand call me the other day, hey, we want to see about getting into your the boutique that I used to have, and I was like, listen, guys, I'm like, you would save a lot of time if you would. Email people first, and then just reach out to the people that express interest, because you can't call everyone. So, I love helping people getting into the retail locations because of that. It was such a foreign concept to me when I was starting it on swimwear. So then now being able to have this process, it's fun to share that.
So the biggest thing is just people don't have good lists. They don't know who they should be contacting, who's the right fit. Now, and
a system for following up with them too.
Is that kind of because they don't know what they don't know, but it sounds like they're not doing enough research. They're just kind of throwing something out there. Yeah.
I think you almost don't realize how big the world is until you're like, okay, I'm going to build a list of all the boutiques that I can contact. And then you're like, it's a lot of work, but virtual assistants have been, the most amazing thing. And I really learned that through marketing.
I super believe in them.
They're incredible. So, I sort of, maybe I
now you can use AI, all the boutiques in San Diego, and the AI will pull up.
Yeah. It's amazing. And so now it's nice. I can, get the leads, dump them in my CRM, and then, and create that process from there. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the key. So if I was trying to get something into rescale, first thing is create the list, then create a powerful email with the risk reversal in there, or is the email just to see if there's interest? What does that look like when you first contact them? Because that's the hardest thing, right? They got to see they got to see the subject, they got to open it, and then they've got to respond. We need them to do 3 things before we can have a phone call.
Now we're in marketing.
Yes, yeah, and it's all stuff that I've learned from you guys as I've. So my first email, and I would think this is really important, is not cramming any really any information down their throats, and just saying, hey, this I've got this product. I think this would be a great fit for you guys. Do you mind if I send some info to you to see if you think so as well? So that, then it's not rude. They and I've even had people respond and say, thank you for asking. Granted, you guys, if they don't respond, then I will follow up with an email later and send them information. Yep. But just, kind of tiptoeing.
Someone that answers, now it's warm. Now it's not cold.
Exactly. Yep. And then just developing those relationships from there. And then get this, get the sale, get the, and the reorder, and then asking them at the, at the end of all of that for, if they know anybody else that would benefit from these products.
Yeah. I love that, because I'm not a big cold email fan, right? And I always like for the person to want you to email them. I found that to be easier. And so we do things to do that. But being in the position I am, I get a lot of cold emails, every day, 3 or 4 or 5 of cold emails. And I'll read the emails, and usually it's we think there might be something between us. We would love to have a conversation to explore, or are you available at this time for us to give you a demo? And I'm I always think to myself, I never respond. I always feel like I should give them a lesson, but I never do, because, I don't like to give feedback if it's not what
I've actually done it
Unsolicited,
once. I've done it once, gave feedback and like yelled at somebody back.
Yeah, but I always think to myself, like, if you had just gone to our website and spent like half an hour going through and figured out how you actually could work with us, and then wrote me an email saying, I think we can do this, this, and this. Would you be open to that conversation? I'm more likely to want to respond because I feel like you've actually done something up front, right? And there's a respect there. I like the way you're doing it because it's basically saying like, hey, I know you're busy, but like I would like to send you some stuff. Is that cool? And it's like you're leading with respect, right? And I think that is what's missing a lot when the cold emails I get. It's like sometimes they don't even have my name right.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, are you the right person? And it's like,
Yeah.
like, surely you could do some research here. Like, surely there's a way for you to know if I'm the right person, or, you know, they're just spraying, you know, and hoping. And then, you know, they'll follow up like, did you get my last email? It's like, yeah, I did. Obviously, like, you know, because you have a tracker that knows that I opened it. So, but it's super interesting because I think that, you know, like Salesforce built their business off of cold email. But there's like ways to do it, and then there's ways not to do it. And I don't see many people doing it right. So that's why I kind of wanted to keep coming back to that and ask you about the process. Cause I just think that, like, you know, people will hear like, oh, I got a cold email, and then they'll be sending their entire product list and shit, like everything like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not how you start a conversation. And I think that a lot of that comes down to just like, how would you start a conversation with someone at a bar
Like a
or
real
something
person.
like that? Yeah. Like,
We're people.
exactly.
We're companies, but we're people. People
Yeah.
like to put their money where their feelings are. And if they feel like they're connecting with a person, it works out much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they say like write it as if you're, you know, if Sarah's on my email list, you know, then I want her to think
Hey,
that I wrote that
girl.
just to her. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have so many different things you're juggling. Like, how do you prioritize? How do you manage that? Do you?
Probably not as well as I should, I'm sure. But, you know, just getting the right people into place. And so I sort of am just starting to like practice allocating, so, you know, certain hours of the day for, you know, for certain things, and, you know, setting myself timers, making sure I'm not going down, you know, too much of a rabbit hole. So, yeah, just giving each business attention, you know, some attention during that day or each day. And, yeah, I'm starting to see, you know, already sort of a difference. And, you know, it keeps me from getting so stressed that, you know, like I used to, I'd like get open my computer, like, I'm like, what do I do today? You know, so having more of a plan helps.
I do that too. I have my virtual assistant. She'll go through my emails and she's like, okay, here's the 3 things that you have to do today. You have to do them. Okay, here's the other 2 or 3 things. If you're feeling ambitious, you need to do by the end of the week. So you should probably do them today if you can. And then here are the things that are waiting a week. But, you know, if you're extra awesome, maybe you get those done too. So then I'm like, okay, I have to do these 3 right now. So I prioritize those to make sure those get done. And I'm sure you do the same thing with your orders. Like, what has to be shipped out by Friday? I have to make sure and get this shit done today for this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I've got, you know, the girls at the office that are filling the orders and everything like that. But
Right?
yeah, yes.
Well, you mentioned earlier you're not the best manager of people. I'm the same way. I'm a good leader, but like when it comes to day-to-day managing, like I have a lot of faith in people that like, hey, you're going to do the job that I've hired you to do. But as I've learned,
That's
and
ambitious.
I know that you've learned, that's a very high expectation to put on people, because people have different personalities, and some people need checklists, and like that's how they operate. And if they don't have that, you know, where I'm like, I'm not going to create that for you. But how have you found good people, and then what have you learned over, you know, your time as an employer about, you know, nurturing those relationships? Because you mentioned earlier, you know, your goal is like when you like if they have a dream, you want to help them, but obviously like a lot of that doesn't happen in the beginning. So how is that, like, as a manager of people, even though you know you wouldn't call, how has that changed, and how do you find good people, and what have you found that actually like attracts great talent but also keeps it?
You know, I mean, first and foremost, you know, finding a person who is at least, you know, as passionate, you know, maybe even more, you know, than you are about, you know, about these products. So I say the girl who mostly runs my office, I was really fortunate to just meet her through friends. And actually, it's funny, it was the Kartra booth where, we had our embroidery machine and I needed help. I'm posting on Instagram, hey, does anyone have free time this weekend to learn how to use an embroidery machine and do this at an event? And she stepped in.
Oh yeah, she did great.
Yeah.
We did the Carter hats at an event and they were beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. And that was such a cool opportunity. So, then when she ended up, I guess she wasn't working too much at the time, but then, she was like, hey, actually, I really enjoyed doing this. Can I do you need more help? And it was just the timing has just always kind of worked out, So she hopped in and some people are I'm like, man, you're so damn smart.
But the timing didn't just work out because you posted about it. You put it on Instagram. Would anyone like to learn embroidery? So you obviously sparked interest in her. Maybe she did it as a kid or something. You still made it happen.
Yeah.
It did just work out, but you did take the action steps to make it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, posting on, even just I like, word of mouth referrals. So that's been actually really, I'm always asking hey, do you know someone who can help me with, with this, that, we're looking to hire one or two more people right now. So
Joanna is an incredible connector. That's one of her other skills besides
Yeah.
her products.
Yeah.
She's an incredible connector.
I think
you.
people listening, as a creator, if you are a natural networker, right?
Natural
Like,
networker.
that's kind of
Networking is a bad
this
name unless you do it right.
yeah,
right.
I love
Yeah,
connecting
yeah.
people. Thanks
And
for that.
it seems like passion and personality are two things that have worked really, really good for you with finding people who have the passion, but they also have that personality. And it's interesting because, I ask when I interview people, I would always ask what's the last book they've read? If it's marketing position, I'm what's the last marketing book you read? Or, because to me, if they're not studying and learning, they're not passionate, and so that's kind of, I always,
Oh, that's hurtful.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
yeah, a lot of people when they have a skill set. You go to college. A doctor can go through all of that, become a doctor, and then they have to do some things to keep their license. But there's other doctors who are literally reading the cutting edge science. It separates the two, and I don't think a lot of people fully grasp that in the workplace there's levels. Just because you have a qualification or you're you're a fashion designer, there's levels to that. There's fashion designers, and then there's the brands that everybody knows. And there's levels and there's different things, and each thing takes a different skill set, a different commitment, and different things like that. But passion seems to be the thing that when you find people with passion, it doesn't really matter where they start, they find the right positions. And we've had people go from customer support agents to rock stars on the marketing team and managers and things like that. And I think that that's just such an interesting thing, because I think when people look for new hires, they always want to look at qualifications and credentials, and the other side of what makes those credentials actually mean something is what they're doing with it. Right?
Well, I like to say, I look at your resume. That's great. And I like to see what you've done, but I'm really interested in what you're going to do for me in the future. What you've done is probably great. And that will show me if you can even reach part of what I need. But I look for hires when I've done some of our best hires were people that have done just a little bit in the space we're trying to put them in. And then they're so passionate about it that they just excelled and grow. Now they're directors managing teams of people, because they know what they're doing and they liked doing that thing. And so we put that to work.
And I will say, and you know this, and I know you know this, is you sometimes have to go through a few bad apples to get those good ones. So but I think it's just a reality. Right? I think it's one of those things and that's something I wish, when I was first getting people into business, is that people would share just the reality of the things that are going to happen. You're going to have great years, you're going to have bad years, you're going to
be on the couch.
You're going to have
Yep.
You're going to have good cash flow, you're going to have bad cash flow. You can have good employees and bad employees, and you're going to think something's going to be a home run and it's not, and then you're going to think something else. You're not even going to think about it. Bikini bands becomes
Those furs were a home run for me, and I love them. She did this really cool white black fur swallow. It's a wallet shawl that was fur, and I feel 6 of them now. I'm I love them. I use them a couple times when I don't want to bring a purse. Put your credit card and your little phone and your wallet. And she doesn't highlight them because I don't know if they did that well. Maybe it was summer and we're in San Diego.
We need to photograph them better. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah. So it wasn't always the winner, but I like them.
Andy was very passionate about that. Felt very strongly about that one product, and that's another brand or product that we need to kind of bring back to life.
But you know what? You move on to the next thing that worked. The swallows didn't take off, but the mask did. So you keep moving.
Yeah.
You mentioned photography there, and I feel like there's probably quite a few things that you feel are like essential to, building a good fashion brand. For someone who's maybe looking to start their own, what are those essentials that like separate? Because like you said, like bad photo is not going to sell a product no matter how good the product is. So do you have some stuff like you would recommend to someone looking into this? Like these are the things you need to focus on.
Well, yeah, I mean, product photography is so key. Unfortunately, I mean, it's kind of cool. You can take really great photos just, with your
With your
iPhone.
iPhone.
Yeah. And there, I mean, between, Photoshop and Canva, I mean, you can kind of do it all yourself. I don't recommend doing it yourself. I recommend finding a graphics person, especially overseas, who can edit your photos for you. But, even our flat lays right now, or, product shots, oftentimes the girls will take them with their phones, send them off to, our graphics guy in India, and he, adds the shadow, and, they can like add like leaves and, cute things around them and everything. So, just
if they were in the jungle.
exactly. Yes. It's in the wild. So it I guess just kind of going back to not needing to spend a ton of money to launch your product. Even, when we have, our like hats, for instance, I get a picture of this hat and then put, the logo on it just in Canva. We don't even have to make one. So it's just being agile, and you see that, like, if you go on, say, Etsy, or, a lot of brands, if you actually like look at, say, their merch, it's not even, they haven't even created that one that's in the photo. So it's,
No.
yeah, I know.
Test your ideas, basically. Like if you okay, this is what I want to do, create the mock-up, make sure it's good, see if you can sell it. And if it sells, then follow that, versus spending all that money on creating. Because I remember one time hearing a story about an influencer, and they had like 2 million followers, and they spent all of this money on t-shirts and stuff like that, and like went live, and they sold like 2 t-shirts.
Yeah.
And they were like 50,000 in on like product, and they, I can't believe my followers didn't purchase and that. And I just remember thinking, like, did you even ask if they wanted it? But what I'm hearing, especially because of the way we are with digital and everything now, it's like, you really don't even have to create the product to test it. You can, come up with your design, put it out there. And what you really need to be able to do is get eyeballs on it. That's the thing that's going to make the difference, is, can we get traffic to see that? Do people purchase it? And if they do, then we go from there.
Yeah. We made some Kartra mock-ups that
Yes,
one day.
yeah, we did.
Well, like I said, it's not always like your great idea that might work. Like, we had this thing for the car show announcement or whatever, and I was like, that's a terrible idea. We surveyed the market, we surveyed our customers, like our agents, our staff, and everybody loved it. I was like, fine. And it's awesome. Now that it's done, I'm like, oh, thank God we went with that one, not my idea, because my idea was garbage. But we tested, we asked, we surveyed.
Yeah, I think sometimes as a creator, you can be attached to ideas too, right? So by doing that, you just, you got to be able to sell it. So even if you can make it for yourself, but if you can't sell it, then it's not going to be what you move forward with. And seems like that's kind of been a saving grace for you, is you've been unattached to one thing. You've kind of, oh, okay, there's people are saying they want this. I don't necessarily see it, but let's try it. Oh, it's successful, let's double down on it, right? And it seems to have guided you in a very successful way. And sounds like that's the advice you're giving, but also when you're working with brands, that's what you're doing for them. It's like, well, you don't have to order 20 hats, just order a hat, and if it sells, we'll do another one, you know? So.
Yeah, I know. I feel that influencer that invested all that money in these shirts, I'm like, I don't want to see that. And so that's like, I'm trying to prevent that.
It's very
and
cool.
support at the same time.
Is there anything else you'd tell a newbie trying to get into the fashion industry?
The fashion industry specifically, gosh, I mean, I have, not to like, plug my own like services or anything, but I think, having, any, whatever your brand is, like add merch and, understand that people do want to, wear, hats and shirts with your, typically with your logo. Start small. But I think just like understanding that you can have your product and then, these other like add-ons, and it's going to add to your checkout value and everything. So try it out, and it doesn't cost a whole lot. So
Yep.
maybe just a couple minutes in Canva.
Oh, cool. How can people learn more about Joanna and all the different brands you have?
So my website, joannakinsman.com, has links to everything that I'm, currently working on. And you can find Keeney Bands, Keeney Supply Co., which is the embroidery and screen printing, and Scale Into Retail, which is my consulting business.
Fantastic. It's been a pleasure having you. Anything else, Sarah?
Nah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just have to tell you about Kartra, the marketing platform that has seriously transformed my business. You know how running a business can be insanely time consuming, right? Well, Kartra has been a game changer for me. It's honestly like having an entire marketing team in my pocket. And what I love most is that it automates all the tedious daily tasks for me, from marketing to sales to even customer experience. I can't believe how much time and energy I've saved since I started using it. And get this. With Kartra, I can create websites, funnels, courses, membership sites, email campaigns, calendars, surveys, you name it. It's made managing my business so much simpler and more affordable. Honestly, I can't recommend Kartra enough. If you're curious, head to paidcreatepodcast.com/Kartra to start your trial. Trust me, you won't regret it.